Well, hello and welcome to ST Energy Network's Powering Conversations. Today we're delighted to have on Scottish rugby stalwart Jade Konkel, one of my best friends in the Scottish rugby team. How are you today, Jade?
Yeah, I'm not bad, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. So you are down in London at the moment in the kind of tail end of pre-season. How's that been for you?
Yeah, it's been really difficult, but enjoyable. Obviously, lockdown was quite tricky for everybody, a really difficult time. But the power of Zoom as well, you know, everybody got to stay together, do some sessions online, which was good, but nothing beats being together, the camaraderie of the squad and being able to get back out there and back into a specific type of rugby practice. So it's been really good, especially when we get back into contact. I think everyone was very hungry for that. So it's been really challenging, definitely some sore bodies around, but really, really exciting and glad to be getting back into it.
We'll start at the beginning then. How did you first get into rugby?
So I grew up kind of watching my dad play. So every single Saturday was spent kind of running up and down the sideline of his rugby matches, like very much to the point where I was trying to get on the rugby pitch because I thought I could do it too. I constantly get told stories where he had to scoop me up mid-game in a tackle because I'd ran on saying that I wanted to hit somebody with him or something like that. So always eager to get involved in the contact from a young age. But when I was about 8 or 9, I said that I wanted to play rugby. So they took me down to the Highland Minis, where obviously I was the only girl in a team full of boys, but definitely gave as good as I get. Got a bit older, so I couldn't really join in with them anymore. And then there wasn't really a pathway for girls after that. So I ended up taking up basketball instead. But when I was 17, I decided I'd had enough. My brothers were getting to play. And I really, really wanted to play. So I drove to Edinburgh for a development day. And then I got into the under-20 squad. And then everything just kind of took off from there.
How have you seen things change in the Highlands? Because obviously for like everywhere in the country, women's rugby is growing. And we hear a lot of like stories similar to yours where, you know, they were the only girl at the club and stuff like that. But I imagine in the Highlands, it's probably even fewer and far between in terms of girls playing rugby. How have you seen, like, is that developed and is there more opportunities now for girls up there?
Yeah, massively. So back in the 90s, there was a women's squad. My mum actually played for them back then, but that was before I could remember. So obviously when I was old enough, I didn't really have any women's sport to see. Back in 2013, they built up their women's squad again, and my mum joined again, and that was when we got to play our first ever friendly game together. And she got player of the match, and she made an intercept or something at halfway and made us run down the pitch, and I just stopped in awe and was like, "Go, mum, keep going!" Didn't support her, nothing, literally just let her go. So she got player of the match. I don't live that one down. Leading on from that, I've gone back and forth, and Highland Rugby Club have started a junior sections. They've got under 15s and under 18s. So when I get home, it's always nice to try and, you know, jump in and see them or run some fitness sessions and stuff like that when I can.
Yeah. You obviously are probably a massive role model for those girls up in the Highlands. So anyone else as you were growing up and as you came into the Scotland stuff who was like a real standout in terms of someone you saw as a role model or someone you looked up to?
Obviously my dad, because I grew up watching him play, and like the highlight of my Saturday was, you know, getting involved, trying to play with him. And then kind of like when I was going through, you know, the under 20s and stuff, he would always do the extras in the garden with me. So having seen him play to then him helping me is obviously being huge, and really look up to him for that. And yeah, just kind of mostly family, and then some of the women's squad players. But when I was in school, I used to always go onto the Scottish Rugby website and look at all the player profiles when I was younger. So that was like when Louise Dalglish was playing, when Donna Kennedy was playing.
Yeah.
Like my lunchtime, just, you know, me in the library after eating my lunch, looking at all these profiles, thinking that's so cool. But even at that point, I never ever thought that I'd play for Scotland. That was just me kind of in awe because I never got to see them on the telly. So I wanted to see kind of like what was on the website, who played, who are they? But they were kind of like superheroes that didn't really exist. They were just a picture on a screen to me.
So moving forward, then you obviously moved up to Glasgow. Was that next?
Yeah.
And on the timeline, so you moved up to Glasgow, played your rugby at Hills, the famous Hills. So tell us a little bit about that time, and then obviously then getting to the point where you obviously were offered your full-time contract. How did that all kind of come about, and tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so when I lived in Inverness, I still played for Hills. So I used to travel back and forth every week.
How
So
long did that take you?
3.5 hours there, 3.5 hours back. To
Wow.
play. But then obviously the good old Scottish weather, quite a lot of games would get cancelled in the winter. So I'd leave at, 5 a.m. and it would get cancelled just as I'd arrive in Glasgow. And I'd be like, there we go again. But you know what?
Yeah.
I learned to love my own singing voice and, the playlist back in the day where you would make those CDs and
Yeah.
put in all your favourite songs. And so that got me through. But,
All your cheesy tunes.
all my favorite tunes. But obviously that was quite taxing. So moved to Glasgow, and then it was much easier because I obviously could make all the training sessions for Hills, could play more games, and kind of actually feel more a part of the team. And then in 2015, Scottish Rugby opened up stage 2 academy spaces for, I can't even remember how many girls, it was 15 or something along that. Yeah. And that was just like more S&C support, more physio support, a few extra skills sessions, and just like all round more of like a development setup for your kind of typical week. And then leading on from that, you get, after that year, they put forward their kind of best stage 2 athletes to stage 3. But obviously no girls having been in stage 2 before, nobody had ever been progressed to stage 3. But the Glasgow Academy then put my name forward to stage 3, saying that I was one of their best stage 2 athletes, so they couldn't not put me forward just because I was female. And then they just pretty much said to me that every year we need to put forward our best stage 2 athletes, and we think that you've been outstanding this year, and we'd like to put you forward to stage 3. And we've spoken with Scottish Rugby, and we'd like to offer you this. So obviously everything was a bit of a shock. Obviously I cried.
Obviously.
I think my brother was actually the first person I called, because going back to role models, like growing up we fought a lot, but I think it all came from a really good place, and now he's like one of my biggest supporters. So I called him to tell him the news, and obviously he was delighted. So 2 weeks after being offered my contract, I absolutely obliterated my rotator cuff in my shoulder, which required surgery, something like 6 or 7 anchors, and it was like 6 months out. So obviously that was really difficult because I knew that there was lots of kind of pressure to prove yourself that the contract was worthwhile. And because I was the first, like, it's great that I'm not going to be the last. So I kind of had to show that it was a really good investment and that we need more women to have these contracts. So it was kind of like stressful at the time. I was in a scenario where I was in the academy with a full male setup, and all these guys had come through all the stages together, so they all knew each other. They'd had, a strong relationship. They played club together. So then there was just me coming in, not really knowing anybody, and also kind of being like not used to that kind of environment. It was quite difficult, and it was quite, stressful. As much as you read all these outside things from other people, you have to just remember that you can only do what you can do. And if I can give absolutely everything I have and leave nothing on the pitch, then that's me done my job.
Yeah, I remember I hadn't been long in the squad, I think, when you were first contracted, and I remembered like you going through all that pretty stressful time. So it's good to hear that you now have had some good reflections and learned a lot from it. The next stage of your rugby career took you abroad. Tell us a little bit about like how I guess that came about and how that experience was for you.
Yeah, so I got a message on Facebook from the coach of the club in France, in Lille, saying that we've seen you play for the national team. We'd really like to invite you over to play with us for the season. So I did some research, and I obviously knew the team, and they were one of the top teams in the top 8. So I thought like that would be fantastic to get that experience. So I spoke to Sheila Begbie, who was the head of the women's programme at the time, and she came back to me saying, we think it'd be a great idea, but let's try and set something up and get a few players over to kind of like give us a good experience. And then obviously for me, I'd have other Scottish players there. So we managed to sort of the logistics around that, and then we moved to France.
So you played in France, and then now obviously you play down in England at Harlequins, which is unfortunate for me because I now have to play against you. How would you compare the two experiences?
France was amazing. Obviously, France are renowned for being extremely physical, something that is really appealing to me in the game. So it was fantastic to be out there to, really step up the physicality in the game. And and then Harlequins is a mix of physicality and really skillful. So it's really good to kind of see the difference, because the cultures are very different over there. They both have a different feeling around like what rugby means and kind of the setups in the week. But moving over to Harlequins, like we really focus on having like a fast flowing game whilst also taking pride in our contact. And so it's kind of like a really good mix of both. But no, it's really exciting. It's really good to play in the top flight in England, and having had the experience from France, I think it's only benefiting my rugby career even further for being down here.
One thing that I want to touch on, which obviously you do away from your rugby, is your business. Away from rugby, you're obviously a PT. So tell us a little bit about how you kind of got into that, I guess, and how it started up, and a little bit about your business, I guess.
So when I was in France, I wanted to look at doing something else outside of rugby, so to try and have that healthy balance of rugby life, outside life. And I find it really hard to relax. I always like to do something and be active. So I love health, fitness, strength and conditioning, everything around the kind of fitness side of things. Because I know personally it's something I've struggled with in the past. It's something I've put a lot of reading into, and it's something that I know like takes a really strong mindset. So I was like, well, I want to kind of like help people know that it's achievable, but without there being such a high pressured situation. So just kind of like giving a bit of belief to people. I got my PT qualifications, looked up loads of different CPD courses so I could like specialize in different areas of it. So I've done behavioral change, I've done nutrition, I've done corrective exercises, just to kind of gauge a broader overview. And then I did my level 4 strength and conditioning. So then I was like, well, how do I do something with it? And then with my rugby schedule, obviously rugby's my number one focus. I wanted to do something where I was in control of my schedule. So set up Apex. And then that's been really successful. It's really taken off, which is good. And, it's keeping me really busy. I've got lots of good online clients whilst also having some face-to-face clients down here in Surrey. So it's like a really good mix, a really good balance. And so it's really good. It's exciting.
I think it's super important that obviously we have stuff away from rugby, and you are definitely a good example of that in terms of always keeping yourself busy with lots of stuff going on. Speaking of being busy, we are obviously looking ahead to what we've been talking about for about 4 years now, our World Cup qualifiers. How are you feeling individually and obviously as a team as well about going forward to the qualifiers?
Yeah, it's obviously different. Also, I've been in the squad a long time, and every time there's some form of different process on how to qualify. And this year they've definitely, thrown in probably the hardest challenge to date. Personally, really excited. Like, it's such an exciting opportunity to be able to play these 3 top teams all fighting for the same goal. And like, it's a great mental battle as well as a physical battle. So I think it is a really exciting challenge, and one that everybody can take, huge confidence and stride in, because we're all kind of building towards the same thing. And I think the kind of atmosphere in the team is everybody really wants it. Everyone's putting in the work when we're together, when we're not together, and you can see how much people want it. We're doing everything we can. We can only kind of focus on our own performance, and then do what we can on the day to obviously qualify for that World Cup, to be on the plane to New Zealand in 2021.
Right, well, just before we finish, I've got 2 questions I want to put you on the spot with.
Great.
See if you've got an answer for them. So I know you love reading and you love your inspirational stuff. I want to know, what is your favourite quote? What's your game day quote that you look at?
One of my game day quotes is, "Don't envy the champion, be the champion."
Love it.
Like that one. Strong, powerful.
That's cool. And then my last question is, what would be your one piece of advice to, 18-year-old Jade starting out in our Scotland journey? What would be your piece of advice for her with all your experience?
As cliche as it sounds, it would be just to have fun, like to enjoy the process, like enjoy the journey. Don't just try and get to exactly where you need to be. So try and take time, reflect, and kind of build on every single stage that you've been in, because it is a long journey. There's lots that come with it. So it's just appreciating every kind of step that you've been on. I
couldn't agree more with that one. I think we stress too much, don't we? So I think, enjoy the process, because that's a massive part of it for sure. Well, thank you so much, Jade, for coming on and chatting to us, and good luck for the rest of the season.
Thank you.